Now, let's look at solving a two-step inequality. Number 2 says m divided by 3 minus 3 is less than or equal to negative 6. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this equation right here, and I'm going to write it over, and I'm going to solve it like a two-step equation. Okay? So the only difference is that I changed my less than or equal to into an equal sign, just so I can work it out and so I don't get confused. My goal is always to get x by itself. This is division, this is subtraction. I always undo addition, subtraction first. So I need to start by adding 3 to both sides, cross off, plus 3 to both sides. Different sign, so I'm going to subtract, so that's going to be negative 3 equals x over 3. I look right here, what's holding them together is division, so I'm going to multiply, so times by 3, cross off, times by 3, it's 9. Then I look back at my signs, this is a negative, that's a positive, so it'll be a negative. Then x drops down, and then I look over at my original problem. Because I didn't multiply or divide by a negative, it stays staying faced the same direction. So that'll be a less than or equal to sign. So that's what I'm actually going to be graphing. So I'm going to go over to the negative 9. I'm going to do an open circle, right? Then, because my variable is the first one, it can tell me which way my line is going to be pointing, and it's going to be going that way because it's smaller than negative 9. Smaller than negative 9. Okay. The next inequality that we're going to graph is going to be negative 3, parenthesis, p plus 1, parenthesis, is less than or equal to, because I come to that point, negative 18. So the next inequality that I'm going to graph is negative 3, parenthesis, x plus 1, parenthesis, less than or equal to negative 18. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've written it over here as a two-step equation, the way that I normally see it, replacing my less than or equal to sign with an equal sign, just so I can not be confused. Now, I have two options right now. Option number 1 is that I can distribute this negative 3. And I can make this negative 3x minus 3, because I'm timesing each thing by negative 3. I can do that. Or I can realize that with these parentheses right here, touching that negative 3, that means that they're going to be multiplying. And I can undo that multiplication with division. Now I know I normally undo addition, subtraction first, but because of the parentheses, I have to save this for last. So I'm going to actually start by dividing by a negative 3. Cross off. Now notice the negative 3 and negative 3, that'll become a positive. That's why it goes away. Divide by a negative 3. So now I've got x plus 1 equals negative negative. I'm now going to have a positive. 18 divided by 3 gives me 6. That's equals. Okay, now I need to get rid of the x by itself. I need to get the x by itself by subtracting 1, so x equals 5. Now, I'm going to go back and put in my sign. Something very important happened in this first step when I divided by a negative 3. When you divide by a negative, what it does is it flips the sign. Okay? So, I started with a less than or equal to sign. When I divide by a negative, what I do is flip the sign. So now I have a greater than or equal to. So x is greater than or equal to 5. And why did it change? It changed because I divided by a negative. When you divide or multiply by a negative, it flips the sign. Okay, so now we need to graph x is greater than or equal to 5. So I'm going to circle my 5. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in the circle because it has an equal sign to it. Fill it in, okay? Now notice how my variable is in the first position, so the arrow is going to point the way that my line's going. So it's going this way right here because x is larger than 5. X is larger than 5. Let's look at solving the inequality of -1 is less than or equal to v minus 2 divided by 21. Okay, so I rewrote it down here as a two-step equation. First thing I'm going to do is I would normally undo addition and subtraction first. But because of the way that it's written, the division sign actually acts like a parenthesis because it says, hey, you need to subtract the 2 from the variable and then divide by 21. And I'm always working backwards. So my first step is actually going to be to times by 21. So that'll cross off. Times by 21. So now I've got negative 21, because a negative times a positive is a negative, equals x minus 2. Need to get the x by itself, so I'm going to add 2. Add 2. Different sign subtract, so I'm actually going to have a negative 19. Keep the sign of the higher number, equals x. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my inequality signs. It was a less than or equal to. I times by a positive number, so that is not going to flip the sign. Only multiplying or dividing by a negative number flips the sign. So my answer is going to be negative 19 is less than or equal to x or v or whatever my variable is. So that's what I'm going to be graphing. So I'm going to go to negative 19. I'm going to circle it. Will it be filled in or not filled in? Filled in. And the reason being is there's a line underneath my variable. There's a line, not my variable, sorry. There's a line underneath my inequality right there. That's what makes it filled in, because it means it can equal 19. Okay, it doesn't have to be just larger than 19. It can equal 19. Okay, now notice the arrow will not point my direction because my variable is not in the first position. X is larger than. So my bigger numbers go to the opposite direction. Instead of going to the left, it's now going to the right.